No, absolutely. Alrighty, so my name is Sabrina Mignerely, and I help to run Hold the Line services. So we are a nonprofit based in prevention for first responder and military member mental health. So I'm going to give a little bit about my background and Hold the Line's background, but then also our partners' background, because we are partners with Pinpoint Behavioral Health. Pinpoint really specializes in mental health care for first responders and their family members. So let's see, this is not letting me switch. So there we go. Okay. So who we are, our background, our bios, and why we do what we do. I'm not going to click on all those little links, but those are there if you all want to reference them. So I have been a licensed professional counselor. I'm a clinical counselor now, but since 2016, and I actually had a little bit of a different story. I knew getting into mental health, into counseling, that I really only wanted to work with military members. And then that quickly branched into first responders because a lot of the same issues, a lot of the same traumas occur in the first responder community. But up until recently, it hadn't really been addressed or talked about. So I got into it. I had had 12 years of therapeutic horsemanship experience, and I thought I was only going to do equine assisted counseling for military members, and that changed when I discovered EMDR and some other folks and some other interventions along the ways. So my background, like I said, I had 12 years of experience with different forms of therapeutic horsemanship. I am an equine specialist in mental health and learning through the Professional Association of Therapeutic Horsemanship, in addition to being a licensed professional clinical counselor. First few years, I spent doing a combination of community mental health and private practice. And the private practice I was linked with did equine assisted counseling as well. And really knowing all along that I really wanted to work with first responders. So I was doing ride-alongs at my local fire department when I could. I totally fell in love with that. That was awesome. I love doing ride-alongs. And then, so I became trained as an EMT myself. So I am a trained EMT. I say trained because I am not active every day. There's a very important, distinct difference between being trained and being active every day with it. I do utilize that for my search and rescue team. I volunteer with the Campbell County search and rescue team. For a while, I did work mobile crisis in Claremont County. I'm not sure who else is familiar with mobile crisis, but it is a grant that was offered through Child Focus. So I technically worked with Child Focus. They supplied the grant. It was through the Claremont County Mental Health Board. And I was actually housed in a police department when I did mobile crisis. So we were dispatched to mental health runs to help the police really recognize if this person needed to go to the hospital or not, and if they did not need to go to the hospital, what resources we could supply with them. And we would often follow up with people 24, 48 hours later as well. That was a very interesting job. After that, I worked on a military installation as a military family life counselor. That was an awesome job. I love that as well. And that's when COVID hit. And when COVID hit, I got linked up with Allison because we were all sent home to do telehealth. And Allison and I had been linked up for a while. We actually met at the First Responder Mental Health Symposium, or the Chip Terry Fund every year puts on a mental health symposium specifically for firefighters. And I'm not sure if you all are familiar with the Chip Terry Fund, but it's pretty important resource. So his wife, Jo, founded the Chip Terry Fund. Chip was a career firefighter who died by suicide in 2017. And after that, his wife founded the Chip Terry Fund to really be an advocate for first responder mental health, to stop first responders from getting to that point. So she really supplies a lot of resources. She's very heavy in Northern Kentucky. Covington is her home base as well. So a very important resource for you all to have as well. So that's what I do. I'm technically a wilderness EMT. I went on to get that training as well to do with search and rescue. But I primarily when I got linked up with Allison, I do equine therapy. So and I do EMDR. I'm trained in EMDR and I'm trained in something called equine assisted EMDR as well, which is I love. I love my work with horses. Is why I got into counseling, because just the really profound difference we can see in treatment is so powerful when you can add the horse into the mix. And I can get into why horses work here in just a little bit. So my office in Bethel it's home base for our nonprofit, but it's also a satellite office for Pinpoint as well. Pinpoint is primarily based out of Westchester. So my office is in my barn. I have my horses, I have Whiskey and Ranger, and they help me with the work I do. And we have a really nice nature trail that goes along the property. It cuts through a creek that we can access as well. So why do we do what we do? So Allison and I were really having an intentional conversation. We were noticing by the time first responders were getting to us, were ready to seek mental health counseling, often different areas of their life, functioning, mood were pretty bad. Often, the word suicide was coming up in almost every intake assessment. It was pretty bad. And as we all know, prevention saves lives, right? So what does it mean for us as a nonprofit to be preventative about first responder mental health care, but also to be linked with Pinpoint to have that reactive piece as well? So we really believe in being proactive and reactive at the exact same time. When we strongly believe what we can predict, we can prevent. There are a few slides about Pinpoint at the very end, because Pinpoint is a very important partner with Hold the Line, but I will get to that here at the end. All righty. Let's see. So this is a little blurb on what we do. So we really exist to prepare, prevent, and predict. So we know, based in research, there's different areas of first responder mental health and functioning that if we can get ahead of it, if we can do education, that we can really change a lot of things. But we believe education changes things. We believe prevention changes things, but we also believe speaking to first responders in a language that is comfortable to them and that they understand. Often, I can't say often, sometimes first responders coming to a clinical office setting is already uncomfortable for them. They're already way outside their comfort zone. So that's why we really believe in utilizing the power of outdoors, horses, education, camaraderie, connection, community to really get ahead of these things. All right, so a lot of what we do is offered at a low cost because we really believe in eliminating barriers, and that's why we really do depend on fundraisers, donors, and grants as well. So on the left, you'll see this is what we have seen as the most common areas of concern when it comes to first responder mental health: relationship stress, unprocessed childhood trauma, cumulative stress, stigma and culture, that is a big one, and substance abuse. Often what we find is a lot of this can be happening at the exact same time. You might have unprocessed childhood trauma, cumulative stress from the job. You think of compounded critical incidents or admin stress or derivative stress. The stigma of it is within certain departments. I want to be sure to say that within certain departments, the culture of if you seek any kind of mental health treatment, you're weak, right? That is slowly being done away with, but some of that really does exist still. But there are some departments that are so ahead of the curve, and it makes me so happy that they are very deliberate and intentional about changing that stigma, changing that culture for their first. But we find a lot of these things can be happening, but it's often when a person is experiencing a lot of relationship stress. That could be divorce, that could be separation, that is really the catalyst moment. That is really the straw that broke the camel's back. And then when they get to us, all of these things are happening, right? So what we do as Hold the Line is we do a few different things. So we provide preventative wellness checks to local police and fire departments. And we do that in a little bit of a different way. We let them schedule a meeting with us, really get to know us as people. And then we often start with a mental health 101, but speaking these terms, these tactics in a language that they understand. So really building that rapport at the same time. So preventative wellness checks, and you think of the PHQ-9, we're really covering that, looking at different domains of functioning of, hey, how's your mood? How's your sleep? Looking at different areas like critical incident, admin stress, and it is all confidential. It is absolutely all confidential. It does not get back to leadership or anything like that, unless, right, we felt like there was a legitimate threat of somebody being a threat to themselves or others. So the mental health 101 trainings and the wellness checks, those really go hand in hand. And what I like to do within those mental health 101 trainings is something that I also do is neurofeedback. So I like to talk about what EEGs have taught us about the first responder brain. So, and I'm actually going to show you this here in just a little bit, is an EEG, an electroencephalogram. Can't believe I said that right on the first try, but is a map essentially of the power distribution of your brain waves, right? So example, if you have super high alpha, which is our ability to focus, to relax, in a trauma biomarker called T6, which is right back here, that often means trauma. That's a trauma biomarker, right? And we have examples that we can teach first responders that, hey, 8 out of 10 first responders who've had an EEG have this going on. Is it possible that this could be going on with you as well? And if it is, let's show you some tools, some skills that can help. Active decompression, and I want to get to that here in a second as well. That is, we think of right after a critical incident, like that 4 to 6 weeks after critical incident is very, very important window to process what has happened. But often first responders don't want to process in that time. Some do. We think there's a lot of different services out there like debriefs and different things that can help them process. But there is a high level of isolation and kind of guarding during that time. But we do know based in education that really decreasing that distress during that 4 to 6 week window is very, very important. So when we do active decompression, we invite them to come out to the farm. Sometimes we go to them, we provide them education on, hey, this could be happening with you. These are some things that can help, and let us get you some resources if you choose to do that. But also them just coming out to our farm, if they choose that, just helps them to bond, just helps them to know that they are not alone following a critical incident. Because unfortunately, what we've also seen after a critical incident is no one talks, right? We don't talk about that. We go on to the next run and we pretend that never happened, which is, we don't want that to happen, right? We want to provide them education as to what you can do at a proper time window for not only you, but for the crew that you work with as well. So we invite them to come out, talk about what happened. We provide psychoeducation. It's all voluntary. And then we do some kind of hands-on outdoor activity that can be doing some equine assisted learning, which is just a lot of ground-based activity with the horses. I've had a group from a Northern Kentucky fire department go riding with me at Lovesome Stables in Dry Ridge. That's awesome. We go kayaking, we go hiking, because mostly we're really decompressing from that stress of that critical incident, right? And it's usually compounded critical incidents. Usually that one really bad critical incident it's not the only one. So it really provides that connection. It really provides that camaraderie to help them know that they're not alone in what they're feeling or what they're experiencing, and they have a good group of people behind them. Let's see, we do provide financial aid. We are a small startup nonprofit. So grassroots, all those words means we're very small, right? So we're still learning, we're still growing, we're still connecting, but we really do believe in providing financial aid of, like, let's say there is a first responder, a volunteer firefighter in Northern Ohio. This is just an example, that something has happened. They don't have insurance, but they want to access counseling. Let's get you connected with someone who does that. And if they, you know, if that out-of-pocket rate is a little too much for you, let us help, please. Which can be difficult. Accepting help can be very, very difficult for first responders. So there's a very certain way that we do it. We provide funding for if first responder wants an EEG. There's a let's see, Right Mind Wellness Center in Cheviot. They help us with the EEGs. If somebody wants that, if they want alternative treatment, like acupuncture, different things like that, as long as we know it's research-based, it's going to work. We don't mind providing financial aid. There is an application process that they go through to fill that out. So my favorite is this next thing is equine assisted EMDR. So EAEMDR. We're going to get more into what that actually means. And outdoor-based retreats. So what we offer current clients, and we're going to start networking with other professionals who work with first responders, is the retreats, or what we call extended sessions. So imagine it's a critical incident or something has just happened in this first responder's life, and they want to do an extended amount of work in one day, right? But we're doing more than one thing. We're doing equine assisted EMDR. We're getting outside. We're doing maybe traditional EMDR, but we're doing other things as well. I love EMDR, but we know there's lots of tools that we can use to help this first responder feel like they're getting a lot of traction on this area in their life that they want. So our retreats, our extended sessions are usually anywhere between 4 to 6 hours. And they are offered at a low cost for first responders and their family members. Neurofeedback, which is training in self-regulation through brain regulation. I want to show you a video on that here in a little bit as well. And then spousal support. So the spouses often feel left out in this. So we really like to provide training and retreats for the spouses as well. So they can help understand what's going on with their person at home, right? How can they support them? But they have unique stressors of their own as well. And we're there to provide support to them. All righty, let's see. So this video, I might show it at the end. I'm not sure if I want to show it right now, but this really hits on the overcoming stigma. So a big therapist guru in the first responder community is called, or her name's Tania Glenn. So she has written a lot of books. If you follow her on Facebook, really, really wonderful resource. She really knows what she's talking about. She's based out of Texas, but she travels everywhere to do book signings, educations, retreats, EMDR, post-critical incidents, like big critical incidents. And she really hits the nail on the head with this little video. This video is really geared more towards first responders about, by reaching out for help, that is not weakness, right? That we're going to smash that stigma, because it's actually a very important sign of strength that we do that. So she's awesome. If you ever want to learn more about it, she has one of her major books is First Responder Resilience. So it's pretty easy to remember. But if you ever want to look her up, she's very, very helpful as well. All right, let's see. I'm going to pause that. I might come back to that later. Then I'm going to tell you a little bit about each of our activities. So the active decompression, that is very much, it's a play on words, how we use that. So the critical steps we take in the days, weeks, and months following a bad call that sticks with us can be life-saving. So this is where we invite them that we can come to them, they can come to us, and we can provide these services, these tools, these resources for them. So we say days, weeks, and months following a critical incident. We also know it can be years, because sometimes by the time a person gets comfortable to talk about a critical incident, it might be 10, 15 years later. And that's okay. That's okay. That is, we can meet them there. We can still help. So we do a combination of different things of EMDR, acute traumatic incident processing, equine therapy, and getting outside in nature. So those primarily following a critical incident, let's say I get a call from a department and this happened last week or 2 weeks ago, we're going to offer that for free. That's where our nonprofit kicks in, right? Because we don't want them to worry about how much is this going to cost for us to do this. We really want to eliminate that barrier. All right, let's see, neurofeedback. So I'm currently in training for neurofeedback, and just a helpful tip for you to know, any licensed professional clinical counselor or licensed independent social worker, you can be trained in neurofeedback as well. So if you have questions about neurofeedback, I'm going to put my email here at the end. I would be more than happy to talk to you about neurofeedback and connect you with Stephanie Ryall. She runs Right Mind Wellness Center, and they do a lot of neurofeedback at her clinic as well. So neurofeedback is training in self-regulation. It is simply biofeedback applied to the brain directly. Self-regulation of good brain function. Self-regulation training allows the system, central nervous system, to function better. So it is so I'm going to go ahead and play this for you all. This explains it in a fun accent that I don't have. So go ahead and enjoy. Oops.
Is there supposed to be sound, Sabrina?
Uh-oh.
Huh?
Yes, there's supposed to be sound. Is
Yeah,
there
there's
not?
no sound.
Uh-oh. Well, that's a problem. There's sound on my end. So
Is anybody else hearing it?
Well,
Oh, you guys can hear?
No, but I think
No
it should be in your it might be in your share video controls.
Let's
So
see.
somebody's saying, unshare it real quick, unshare your screen, and then share with hitting the button that says allow computer sound.
Okay, let's see.
It might be because it's embedded, which is easier than, you know, going and having to share your YouTube screen. But there is an option.
Let's see. All right, give me just a minute, guys. I'm gonna try to figure this out. All righty. I want to try it one more time, and if it doesn't work, what I'm going to do is I will send the links to each of these as well, to these videos. So there is the lower left of the share window screen. Okay, let's see. All right, let's try it one more time.
Have you noticed that certain
Is there sound now?
That was it. Yes. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
functions our bodies perform are not intentional or executed consciously? We are not aware of the intricacies going on inside our heads or of all the connections that are made when there is an emotion or a thought. Is this really the case? Neurofeedback, the key to manage our brain. Our brain contains billions of neurons, and these seem impossible to map and to locate the origin of a problem. We only have proof that since the 1930s, data exchanges between the neurons produce a small electric magnetic field that we can measure and study. This is called electroencephalography, or EEG. The QEEG neurofeedback is the study of the measurement of the brain's electrical activity. Neurofeedback entails applying electrodes to the client's head, which enable it to read the electrical signals emitted by the brain. These signals represent the mental state in which we find ourselves. For example, when relaxed with closed eyes, the dominant frequency of the signals emitted by the brain is generally between 8 and 13 Hz. But how does this work? Neurofeedback informs our brains through visual and auditory feedback to learn to correct signals spontaneously and rectify the waves and connections that are not adapted to the person. It's a bit like having a teacher next to you who points out errors and allows the person to correct them. A session works like this. We put a hat with several receptors attached to your head. We also attach clips on each earlobe, which serve as reference points, grounding points, and are able to measure brain activity on demand. Each receptor will take the electrical activity that is recorded and compare it to the neutral activity measured from the clips on each earlobe. And then the session begins. It is entirely steered by the computer. Every time signals indicate the beginning of turbulence by a strong variation of amplitude, the program cuts the sound of the music or interrupts the video game or movie briefly. It is this microcut that constitutes feedback and allows the brain to return to present, and thus unconsciously learn to stabilize the brain signals. The brain then reorganizes its neurons little by little to optimize the passage of a good signal. All of this is thanks to our neuroplasticity, the same one that allows us to do neurofeedback every day within our normal environment. The training is progressive and the changes are dynamic, and when a modification is made, it lasts for life. The brain is a muscle, and like other muscles, if we make it repeat the same exercises several times, these end up becoming automatic. Similar to a high-level athlete who eternally repeats the same actions until they become as natural as possible. As with sports, we improve with practice, so with these brainwave modifications, changes can continue to be produced without the need for the device. Neurofeedback normally treats stress, ADHD, anxiety, sleeping troubles, depression, autism, etc. However, it is a technique designed to optimize the brain, so it is not necessary to have neurological or psychological problems to see beneficial effects. In the area of training potential, neurofeedback can be an employee without limits. It is also interesting for professional athletes, entrepreneurs, the average worker, and also artistic practices, as it is useful to improve attention, memory, and creativity.
Alrighty, so a lot of people ask me why neurofeedback. Like that sounds, I remember the very first time I was introduced to neurofeedback. What is this? What are you talking about? When you think of first responders, sometimes the level of dysregulation that can be happening is pretty severe. And for them to even grasp on to concepts like DBT, like grounding, like mindfulness, it can even be a far reach for that. So when we think of really training that level of dysregulation, or what we would call over arousal, down naturally, is why we really look at doing that. So neurofeedback can be done within a clinical setting, or it can be done outside of counseling as well. So it is beneficial for lots of folks, but there are certain backgrounds you have to be able to be trained in neurofeedback as well. So that is just one of the tools we have in our toolbox as well. If you ever want to do more research, I'm trained through SADAR Psychological, but there's lots of different ways out there that you can be trained. But there's also lots of good research out there as well. Primarily what we look at for neurofeedback is we know it's very, very good, according to research, for PTSD and ADD and ADHD. So just important information to have. But so this is an example EEG. So person comes in for an EEG. This is the map we use. This is our treatment essentially as to how we know how we're going to train their brain. So this is an example, and I'm going to move myself over here. So these little things over here that you see, these are all spots on the brain. So F4, that's frontal, C4, that's central, P4, that's parietal, O is occipital, and then we have temporal over here. So if you notice this right here, this T6, that was that biomarker for trauma that I was talking about. And if you notice, this person has very high, this is a yellow wave, that's alpha. So if a person has very high activity in alpha or above a certain frequency that we don't necessarily want there, that is very indicative of trauma. So, and it's very tangible for a first responder to see this, to say, oh, it's not just me legitimately happening, right? And I have seen them say immediately of like, oh, like this is like, it's not just me making this up, like this is actually happening. Yes, this is really happening, right? We can look at it, it's real, and we can train it to be better. So it's very, very cool for them to look at. I should say, if you notice that little blurb at the top, neurological report, we tell them that this is how we know we're going to train you for neurofeedback. This EEG, this is a real life first responder EEG map. I do have this person's permission to share this, but their name is not on here anywhere. It's been redacted. So let's see. And if you notice that little hot spot back here in T6, that's trauma, right? And some neurofeedback trainers are actually very good at looking at each wave and like telling like kind of what happened in that person's life, because we have certain dominant waves in our brain based in different times in our life. So it's fascinating how deep you can get into it. So this is just an example report, EEG report that we would use for neurofeedback. And based on different Brodmann areas, which are just different parts of the brain do different things, right? It can tell us what can be happening according to that power differential. So for example, this person has excess power in the right occipital parietal as well as frontal midline region, So rule out trauma related OCD features, rigid thinking or patterns of thinking or fixating. So mostly we want to see, like, check in with a person, say like, hey, is this happening for you? Right? Do you notice this? And some of them, when they've seen their EEG, they're like, okay, this is freaky. Like, how did you know this? So this is what an actual EEG looks like. So bicentral mu rhythm is really indicative of ADD. So they're just essentially the EEG, this is what it looks like when your brain is actually being mapped. But then we take it and we put it into pretty pictures as well. So that is neurofeedback in a nutshell, a very short nutshell. So that is a tool that we do, and I'd be happy to answer more questions on that as well. Another thing we do that I alluded to was the neck up checkups and mental health 101s. So we go to departments and we do check-ins. We do these mental health trainings for them, but we really building rapport and relationship as well. Allison, who does them with me, she is a spouse of a first responder. And so she has a lot of experience in that as well. And we really do this based on their schedule as to what is best for them. So I cannot take credit for this nice little graphic right here, but this is where we do our mental health training. This comes from First Line, Reboot for Recovery. If you ever want to research them, they came up with this graphic. I do have to use it. And they have really narrowed it down into the 6 areas of common stress and trauma for first responders. And I can say this firsthand, this is very, very common. I see this all the time. Critical incident stress, compounded critical incident stress, we let them look at the signs and symptoms. We do education as to why those signs and symptoms develop. Traumatic brain injury is in the first responder community. A lot of them are former military or grew up playing sports. If you ever want training and screening for a TBI, you can look up OSU TBI ID. Ohio State is actually working a lot with mental health professionals to help them screen their clients for traumatic brain injury, because that can show up in a lot of different behaviors. Moral injury, I have not heard of moral injury. I'm sure you have. I would really encourage you to dig into it. So this is like an injury to the innermost being, right? I didn't do the thing I wish I could do, or why did that happen, right? Like really questioning your own internal morals, beliefs, values, like things have happened to really make you question that, right? So loss of meaning, isolation, it happens very, very commonly with trauma, very, very commonly. And then cumulative and derivative stress, which is the things that have happened over time. This is very, very common with first responders. We send them out on a ruck, right? And we have them pick up rocks for each thing that they resonate with. And these rocks are the littlest, but they often have the most in their bag, right? Because it really weighs them down, just like the admin stress, the derivative stress, the day in, the day out stuff that can go with the job and how that can bleed over into other things. And then childhood trauma. We know a significant amount of first responders are walking into the job with a significant amount of unprocessed childhood trauma, and how that's can change our brains, can really play into dysregulation and how we view the world. So we just do education with them. That is a very sensitive subject. And we just do education as to what it could look like, right? We do education on ACEs, we do education on attachment, and just really help them to process through that education. All right, so this is my favorite, equine assisted EMDR, which is really partnering equine therapy with EMDR. So I'm going to show you this video. This is the woman who I was trained through. I went to Arizona back in January to do this, and just helpful information that is out there. So horses by nature, they're hypervigilant prey animals, right? So that means they're on guard, they're on alert all the time. So they connect well with our first responders, right? Because they feel that connection. They feel that I'm hypervigilant all the time. I have to be aware all the time. But horses are very keen at picking up changes in their environment because they have to, they're surviving. But that means us. Like when we enter their environment, a horse is picking up on, when I say picking up on what you're bringing, we carry all of our emotions physically, right? That feels different in our body. And that is what horses are picking up on because they have to, right? They need to know the intention of your emotion to know if it's safe and congruent. And if they're safe, they want connection with you, right? They want to be in a herd with you. So it's really, really powerful, the work that equine therapy can do. And I think a lot of first responders like it. I would say about 30 to 40% of my clinical caseload is interested in equine therapy. Some of them, not so much. They don't want to touch a horse. It's like, okay, you can come here. You don't have to touch the horse. That's fine. But the ones that do, I love to do education with them as to why it works. So I'm going to show you a video on equine assisted EMDR. And by the way, interrupt me if you don't hear the sound. I'd be happy to fix it again. And then I'll talk to you a little bit more about it.
I'm Sarah Jenkins, and my practice is called Dragonfly International Therapy, based out of Tempe and Chandler, Arizona. And I'm not only an MDRIA-approved EMDR trainer, consultant, and therapist, but I'm also an equine-assisted therapist. And through the combination of those two worlds, I created something called equine-assisted EMDR, also called the Equilateral Equine-Assisted EMDR Protocol. What I wanted to give you is a brief description of what that training is, and if you're an equine therapist or an equine professional, maybe a little bit of a highlight about what this training might mean for you. We know in the equine world the power of working with horses. It is indescribable about how these equine partners really teach our clients, teach us. But at the same time, as a trauma and dissociation specialist, what I know, it's very important that we actually have a real phased approach to working with trauma, because we can blast people out of their window of tolerance and we can actually do harm if we don't treat the trauma in a very gradual, incremental way. At the same time, even though we know the power of the horse, research is something that really is necessary. And the beauty of equine-assisted EMDR and attending this training is you get a research-based model for trauma, and you also get to partner with your friend the equine in terms of bringing the equine into all 8 phases of EMDR. So if you're an EMDR therapist, or if you're an equine professional who's partnered with an EMDR therapist, or maybe you're someone that fits both, you are welcome to join this training. So if you'd like to learn more about equilateral and the equine, I'm Sarah
right.
Jenkins.
Let's see. I meant to go on to the next one. So she talks in some terms that are very common to her, but horses have an incredible way of teaching us to regulate. And so you think of a person as in hypervigilance, right? If they're constantly checked out, they have an innate way, without making anyone talk, right, of bringing them into their window of tolerance, of helping them to become safe and present and calm, and maybe a way that they've never experienced before. So I've had plenty of first responders show up and say, I'm not touching that horse. I'm like, okay, you don't have to. And then by the end, guess who's doing equine assisted EMDR, right? That's more clinical side. But so these are coming back to the retreats that we do. These are really customizable retreats that if a person, if a first responder or a spouse or a family member wants to come out and do one of these retreats or extended sessions, this is customized to what they're going through, what's happening for them, what's going to be safe and effective for them. It might be equine assisted EMDR. It might be traditional EMDR with more nature-based approaches. We can utilize the nature trail, right? There's lots of different things we can do. There is a screener that we send people through to make sure that this is a safe setting for them. But we love it. We do these primarily in the spring and in the fall. All right, so that's a little bit more. Let's see, financial aid, I've covered a little bit. We do help sometimes cover the cost of SGB. I don't know if anyone has ever heard of SGB, but it's stellate ganglion block. But we encourage people to do their research. We cannot tell them what to do whatsoever, but if they are applying for financial aid for an alternative treatment, that is something that we can help them with as well. We can help with co-pays. Let's see, and where are we located? So my main office is in Claremont County in Bethel. That as it sounds, it's just about a half hour east of Cincinnati. I actually have people that come from all over. I have people that come from Dayton. I have people that come from Florence. So I have people that come from like Adams County, like what's even Scioto County, there we go. And then we partner with Love Some Stables in Dry Ridge, Kentucky. So Dry Ridge is halfway in between Cincinnati and Lexington, and they have a beautiful facility, absolutely beautiful facility. So if we're gonna do more group work, we usually partner with Love Some because they have a beautiful indoor arena. They have about 40 horses. So a lot bigger than we are with our 2 horses, but there's definitely a time and a place for them as well. And we are mobile, that if a department wants a check-in, they want a mental health 101, right? They just want to meet us, that we can go to them and we can meet them as well. We do help departments, if they are interested, create post-critical incident protocols, essentially, because I get a lot of deer in the headlight looks of like, oh my gosh, like this person's not okay right now, what do I do? Right? And we help them write that protocol as to after it happens, all they have to do is flip to it and they know they have lots of resources, they have lots of tools, they have lots of education that they can do, that they don't have to think already because they're already having to handle so many other things at that point in time. So we can help departments with that as well. Let's see, and then quickly, when are our service access? It's usually primarily after a critical incident, but it doesn't always have to be like that. We really like prevention. So we really like to get in and build relationships with departments before things happen, because unfortunately we know that things are going to happen. We are funded by grants, donors, and private funding. We will have a very fun family-friendly event coming up in November. So follow us on Facebook, check out our website for more information. Let's see. And then I'm going to talk quickly about our partner Pinpoint, because we would not be able to do what we do without Pinpoint, our partnership with them. So Allison, very much so, saw that there was a need for a really niched mental health professional who work with first responders, who know the culture, who know how to speak to them, because sometimes you will speak to them a little bit of a different way. And so she started Pinpoint, and her husband is a first responder. And this was really initiated after he was very good friends with Chip. And after we lost Chip, we know we needed to do something. So she founded Pinpoint. Let's see. Outpatient, EMDR, DBT, CBT, and more. We do primarily work with veterans, military members, first responders, their spouses, and their family members. Work with kiddos and general population as well. So you can check out pinpointbhs.com. And then that is a list of the whole team. Our biller is amazing. We thank her every day. Let's see. And then those are our locations. And then we do offer telehealth, and soon to be, we will be adding Virginia onto that as well. TriHealth for EAP work. So we are an external provider for them as well. Pinpoint is. And that's it. That's it. So I droned on a lot about a lot of different things that I'm passionate about. So I'm going to stop screen sharing, and I'm going to see if anyone has any questions.
There are some questions that came through chat. So if you don't mind, we'll just scroll back a little bit. And, you know, one, I think going back to, so we have a retired first responder who thinks it's all very fascinating. I think that was around the neurofeedback. So somebody said, how much is it? That was Cassandra. And Cassandra, was that in reference to getting trained as a provider, or can you clarify for us? You have to turn. There you go.
Try to get to my mic here.
Yep.
Yeah, well, how much is it if for a client?
Oh, how much is a session?
Yeah, like say if I wanted to come and do a session with the what do you call it, with the things on your head, ERG or whatever.
Neurofeedback.
Yeah.
Neurofeedback. If I would do that, because there's no way you don't take insurance, right?
Right. It is a gray area for insurance for neurofeedback, and neurofeedback can be for anyone. It doesn't have to be just if you're in counseling. So we charge $25 a session for that. We do that primarily because if you were to go to anywhere else, it'd be between 50 and 60 for a neurofeedback session. Since we are working with first responders, we want to decrease that rate. So we do ask, just as the person confirms with us that they are a first responder, we're going to take them at their word that they are. So for first responders, it's 25. For general population to go and usually recommend they go to Right Mind Wellness Center because they have a lot more techs. It's not just me. But if they aren't able to get in, then we could do it at our location, but it would be closer to 50 for that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Are there any other questions?
Is there a phone number? I'm sorry. Do you guys have a phone number?
Yes, we do. That is a wonderful question.
Sorry to interrupt whoever that was. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I was just going to ask the next question. You're fine.
Yeah, so I will put my contact information in the chat, and then I will send it to Melissa to blast out as well.
Okay.
But actually, if you want, I'll go ahead and I'll put that in the chat right now.
That'd be great.
So the phone number is 513-278-3074. You'll reach me directly if you call or text to that. Okay. So
513-278-3074.
And I'm typing it in the chat, right?
Okay. I just want to make sure, because sometimes people are listening and not looking at the chat, and I didn't hear the numbers all the way. So thank you for putting it there too.
Awesome.
Yeah, another question somebody had, like on slide 16, which she mentioned it was a little bit small, and wanted to know what the source was for that information.
16. Let me go back.
It was something with gates on it, apparently.
Yeah, that was First Line. So if you look up First Line Reboot for recovery, I can actually, let me see if I can pull up that real quick and just send it. Let's see.
I'm gonna write it down in case, until I have it in the chat too.
Yeah, it's recovery.com. So some of their things, they do come out from a faith-based, like to let people know that I'm not putting that on them,
Yeah.
but it's just some of their information is very, very helpful the way they put it together.
Okay.
Actually, let's see. I'm going to, why can't I find the chat right now? Da, da, da.
Look on.
There it is.
Got it.
Okay.
I was gonna say, yeah. There you go.
There we go. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
So there was something else I know I saw in here. Oh, do you work with children or just adults?
So me personally, if I'm doing equine assisted learning, if I'm working with a kiddo of a first responder and they want equine, they only do that. If they are not interested in equine, I will refer to someone within Pinpoint who does play therapy, who really specializes. But if they're looking at a family type, like, hey, I want to come out and do something with my family, I'd be more than happy to do that.
Okay, great. Right. So then equine assisted learning, you said can be done with like children or families of first responders, correct? Okay.
Right.
So as long
And
as you're keeping it like focused on the first responder is what like most of your services sound like you really are, you know, that's part of your mission and your goal is to make sure that those folks are served. Yeah.
Right.
Perfect.
Right.
But then Pinpoint, although they focus on first responder and military, do they also see other folks or just, okay.
Yep. They
Gotcha.
sure do.
Gotcha. Yeah. I didn't realize how many people were in that practice until you had that up on the slide.
Yeah.
Good. And I didn't know y'all went to Love Some Stables in Dry Ridge. That's
Yeah.
close enough to me that I want to go see that place.
Yeah. Let me know. I'd love to show you.
Yeah, we check out, well, my daughter and I checked out stables a bunch when we were like looking for different places to board her horse. And then, but I want her to check out some places that are doing some things like what you're doing, right? As she finishes out her year, right? And decides what to do next.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Jody, who runs Love Some, she started it years and years ago. She is so helpful and so kind that I'm sure she would answer any question.
So Madeline used to volunteer at New Day. Are you aware of New Day? Yeah. New Day Ranch. Yeah.
Very cool. So there was a question. So Beth runs New Day. She's awesome.
Yes.
Let's see. There was a question that just came through about
for equine assisted therapy, do you have a local provider you'd recommend or would people contact you? So it looks like you're doing stuff locally in terms of traveling around, correct?
Right. So if this is specific, if they're looking for equine therapy specific to first responder military, then yeah, you can definitely contact me. If you're looking for a more general population, I have a list that I could get to you right off the top of my head. Let's see, of equine therapy, because you're, equine assisted learning, equine assisted counseling, like therapeutic riding, they're all a little different.
Right.
I know Carol Bauer where was she at? Loveland. I know she was doing it. But I know there's been some new people to pop up to be doing it with general.
Okay. Yeah. If you can share that list through me, that would be great.
Yes, I will definitely do that.
Okay. Somebody asked, Abby's asking, would you come to Zanesville area to do a training or do one online? So
yeah,
either or to reach out to you.
Yeah, we love doing that.
I think your contact info is on your PowerPoint, is it not? Yeah.
I thought I put it in there.
And you also put it on the chat. So
okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've
got in the PowerPoint too.
I've got a lot of friends that are firefighters, and then the one big fire department in Zanesville is connected. So I thought, and my ex-husband's a firefighter, which we're still friends. And I was telling him about this training while we were on it. I texted him, oh my gosh. And he said, that is so, and he's been there for like 20 years or longer. So he could, maybe help set that up, but it would be so good for these guys. They just lost somebody a couple years ago to suicide, and so I just think that'd be so cool.
Yes, I'd be more than happy to connect with you on it.
Thank you.
And Abby, I'm sending you a direct message. Okay. Connected to a bunch of first responders. I have some scholarships for our conference in October, specifically for first responders through a grant.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
if you think anybody will want to come down to this area, and then please, email me.
I definitely will, and I'll pass it to my ex-husband because he would
Perfect.
probably want to do that.
Yeah, no, fantastic. I think
Okay.
that we'd love to have him and
Thank you.
his peers come and take advantage of this free training. Yeah. Or the
Yeah.
conference for free. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for being here. I feel like I got most, if not all, the questions that popped up. Anybody else have a question that wants to either speak up or put it in the chat before we let Sabrina go here in a few minutes?
One more question. How far are you from Dayton, Ohio?
About 90 minutes.
Okay, so about an hour.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We're going to have to come see you. This was an excellent training.
Yes, please do. I would love to.
Let's have a field trip, right?
Right? I love field trip.
Let's go to
Let's all
Bethel.
go together.
She's like, I'm coming. I'm gonna bring some people. Well, this is
I'm
so
a
fascinating.
probation officer. Can that be a first responder?
Probation
Absolutely.
officers. Oh,
100%.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Okay, well, if anybody else wants like the discount code for those of you who might want to come to the conference and aren't members, this is your reminder to reach out to me for that. And this has been great. I know when I contacted Sabrina and had a chat with her about what she was doing after I saw she got some equine assisted EMDR certification, and I was just fascinated, and what you've brought today is just really interesting, amazing things that can help people who've experienced trauma. And even if you're specifically doing the first responder and military population, I mean, just for all of us to realize too that there's so many other options out there that outside of the traditional therapy, which is what we always look for at TTN as well. And me personally, like when I was doing trauma work, for the last 20 years, we started with just everything CBT. And I was just like, oh my God, no, this isn't cutting it. And I could feel it as a young therapist. And as I kept going, I'm like, what else we got here? What else we got? And now we're finally getting into, all this other stuff, the neurofeedback, the EMDR, the somatic work, in general, all of the trauma living in the body and what do we need to do with it. And equine assisted therapy is so amazing. Horses are just amazing creatures therapeutically. And I know that from my own experience with our daughter. And so thank you so much for being here, providing this information. The videos were great. Appreciate the work you're doing for military and first responders. My dad, having been both of those when he was alive, could have used you for him too. But that's okay. There's still plenty to go around, right? There's still plenty of them around, and we can send them your way for these amazing services. So thank you. And thank you for letting me record it so that people who couldn't stay the whole time or couldn't make it can get the benefit of that. And I'm gonna, follow up with you on what my promise was to you in terms of doing this for us. And so I will be in touch. Thank you.
Thank you so much for letting me be part of it.
Yeah. All right. Well, it sounds like lots of people are thankful as well here in the chat box. And you guys have a great rest of your afternoon. Thanks for being here to learn from one of our local gurus here. Take care.
Thank you.